What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Quick Thoughts episode, another NFL mock draft. This time, the purest of them, and why Justin Fields has been traded from the Chicago Bears. And I'll briefly talk about that before I dive into the draft. I've had a lot of mock drafts where Justin Fields was the quarterback in Chicago because it gave so much versatility to explore scenarios, right? Maybe Chicago trades back and Minnesota trades up, or the Vegas Raiders trade up, or Denver trades up, or the Giants trade up, or whoever else it is, right? And so it provides a little more content. But at the end of the day, I think a smart decision was for Chicago to move on. And now that they have, severely limits the excitement I could get in with trading up for quarterbacks in the draft and in real life, both in mocks and in real life in the NFL draft, the potential for teams to trade up. I mean, you could still trade up to, four or maybe even three if New England's not convinced whoever falls to them is the guy. But I want to say Chicago, I think, made the smart move. Didn't get a whole lot of value back, though. I think if we look at Justin Fields' career production and say that he's only a sixth round pick, I think that's significantly lower than I thought it would be. We look back just a few years where guys like Sam Darnold were being traded to Carolina for a second, a fourth, and a sixth. And I think that Justin Fields has proven just as much, if not more, in this league as Sam Darnold. I'm not sure he's a franchise guy, but I'm sure he's one of the 30, maybe 40th best quarterbacks in the NFL, which Sam Darnold's about right there, right? 35, 40. So I like the deal for the Steelers because it gives them a situation where they went from a quarterback room of Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges to trading essentially a sixth round pick and spending $1 million in free agency to bring in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And I think the ceiling is so much potentially higher with those two guys. I didn't understand trading Kenny Pickett away, but now that they've acquired Justin Fields, it makes a lot of sense. And that's something I kind of overlooked, honestly. But having Justin Fields back up Russell Wilson, if Russell Wilson struggles, you have a great option in Fields. I don't know if they're going to give him the fifth year option and keep him around an extra year, but both guys are on 1 year deals essentially. We'll see how that goes for them. I like the move for them a lot. Now into the mock draft, it's certain Chicago is going to be taking a quarterback number one, and so that's what I'm going to have them doing. This mock, I as much as my other mocks recently, I've been trying things, seeing what happens if I trade certain picks or if certain teams target certain positions. This is a post-free agency mock, so a lot of picks are kind of going to change a little bit based on what teams have done in free agency and what my gut feeling is the direction they're going in this draft. So as I mentioned, Chicago, pick one, USC's quarterback Caleb Williams. You can make an argument for Drake May or Jaden Daniels, but at the end of the day, you take the best player available, you take the highest rated player available, and when you need a quarterback, you make that a quarterback at the end of the day. And so that's what I think Chicago will do. Hold on one second. Checking mic settings. Okay, we're good. Washington at pick two. This is something I've gone back and forth on. If we're saying that my true heart of hearts as I sit here right now, I'm about a 50-50 split. On the Predicting Every Quarterback podcast episode I had with special guest Matthew Burwell, that's live on the channel. Check that out. I predicted Drake May would be the starter in Washington and Jaden Daniels being the starter in New England. And as time goes on, I just get the feeling, especially with the Washington signing Marcus Mariota, who, if we're comparing to one of these two guys, is much more similar to Jaden Daniels. New England's history of the quarterback position, I feel like they're probably more comfortable with Drake May, but frankly, it doesn't matter. It matters who Washington takes it to. And I I'm a big believer in the backup should play like the starter because you don't want to change the system too much. And when you have a system like the Jets is a perfect example. I like the signing of Tyrod Taylor because I think he plays pretty similar to Aaron Rodgers. Um, Even Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, although Justin Fields is certainly more mobile, they're still, somewhat in the same ballpark of quarterback. Um, you could go on and on. Lamar Jackson and Snoop Huntley for a while in Baltimore, exact same example, right? Lamar, obviously a more elite runner, and a more elite thrower, obviously, but similar style of play. And Marcus Mariota is a guy who can get out of the pocket, who I don't know that Drake May is that guy. I know that Jaden Daniels is that guy. If he's on the move, I feel more comfortable about him throwing out of the pocket than nearly every quarterback in this draft. You can make an argument for Michael Penix Jr. So if I had to make a bet right now on who Washington takes it to, it's Jaden Daniels. And if they didn't, or if they did, frankly, and New England is not in love with this quarterback that falls to them at 3, they're going to trade out of this pick, in my opinion. I don't see a Marvin Harrison Jr. happening here. I think they trade out of this pick. They trade back to maybe 6 because they have so many holes. and the Giants definitely need a quarterback. I could see that happening. Giants trade up to 6 if New England doesn't love Drake May. New England takes, I don't know, whatever wide receivers available at that point, or maybe an offensive tackle like Joe Alt out of Notre Dame. But at the end of the day, I don't think that's what happens. Either way, I should say either way, I think they're taking a quarterback in this draft. If they do trade back because they don't love Drake May or Jaden Daniels, whoever falls to them, I think they sneak up into the back of the first round and take a guy like Bo Nix, excuse me, from Oregon. But in this case, I'm going to have them taking Drake May. I think this is definitely the choice. Oh, Isaiah Thomas just signed a 10-day contract with the Phoenix Suns. That's awesome to see. Anyway, New England drafting Drake May, quarterback out of North Carolina. Arizona at pick 4. I mean, it's almost impossible for me in any mock draft to not have them taking Marvin Harrison Jr. if he's on the board. You can make an argument for trading back if the package you got was an insane haul, right? If you're sitting here at 4 and the Giants are trading with you at 6, and I say the Giants because I think they're the most likely team within the next 8 picks to take a quarterback. Maybe 7. 1, 2, 3. Oh, no, it's just 6. No, 7 because the Jets are 10th. If the Giants are trading, willing to trade up and they're willing to give you 3 firsts on top of this pick 6, then you take that, right? You take the 3 firsts, you trade back, you take probably Malik Neighbors because then the Chargers you assume the Giants would take a quarterback and the Chargers would take Marvin Harrison Jr. Ooh, Chargers fans will love that. But unless that package blows you out of the water, you take Marvin Harrison Jr., you give your newly extended quarterback Kyler Murray an elite weapon right off the bat coming out of college, out of Ohio State. And I think they love that pick no matter what. I would be floored if Arizona has this pick, does not trade it away, and doesn't take Marvin Harrison Jr. The Chargers at pick 5, I think I've had them taking a lot of different players in various mock drafts. I've had them taking Malik Neighbors, wide receiver from LSU. I've had them taking Joe Alt, tackle from Notre Dame. I've had them taking Brock Bowers, tight end from Georgia. At the end of the day, the Chargers lost a lot of weapons this offseason. They lost Keenan Allen. They lost Mike Williams. I forget who their third wide receiver was last year, but they lost him too. They desperately need weapons. Quentin Johnston is frankly not the guy there. And, maybe he could turn himself into something, but I'm not impressed with his play so far, certainly as a number 1. I think if you bring Malik Neighbors in at pick 5, you feel good about him being the number 1 in Jim Harbaugh's system. With Justin Herbert at the quarterback, he's going to get a lot of targets at the wide receiver position. I like that pick a lot for them. The Giants at pick 6. This is one that I mentioned them trading up for a quarterback. And as much as the wide receiver room needs help, as much as they just let their biggest offensive weapon in Saquon Barkley go, I think their biggest need, as most teams whose quarterback is not their franchise quarterback yet, their biggest need is at the quarterback position. You help solidify this offensive line throughout the free agency period. I think I wouldn't hate going tackle here if you want to, play a guy like Joe Alt or Olufashanu or even Tadley Sprawaga at right tackle. And then you want to move Evan Neal inside to guard. I don't hate that pick. But if I had to put my money right now, and the rumors are swirling that the Giants are in love with J.J. McCarthy, if I had to put my money on it right now, J.J. McCarthy seems like the Giants' next franchise quarterback. And I think this is incredibly early at 6. In my early mock drafts, I had him going in the back half of the first round. And I don't feel that much differently now. But even though I think he's probably the 5th best quarterback in this draft and probably doesn't deserve to go before pick 25, that may be a hot take. And the Giants may think very differently. And so if I had to bet $1 million right now, I'm going to say the Giants take J.J. McCarthy at 6. Pick 7, the Tennessee Titans. A similar story to the Chargers. I think the free agency moves really showed that a direction in this draft. And while I may have had them taking Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors if he fell to them in previous mock drafts, given that they signed Calvin Ridley, given that they still have DeAndre Hopkins, given that their offensive line desperately needs help, I think they go tackle here. And I think that's Joe Alt. You just help solidify that left side of the line. You protect Will Levis. You find out if he's the guy this year. And then you move on from him if he's not. Atlanta at pick 8. I've always been a proponent of Atlanta going defense. And there's always an inkling of me that thought maybe they would go quarterback or trade this pick for a quarterback if that situation worked out. Obviously, it's not the case. They signed Kirk Cousins in free agency, one of the big winners of free agency. Both Kirk Cousins and the Falcons winning big because the Falcons get their franchise guy, probably are the favorites to win the division, and Kirk Cousins got a bag. But I think they could use another edge piece. Um, I don't hate Dallas Turner here. I think this is the most likely pick, especially with Raheem Morris at head coach there, probably bringing more of a defensive mindset to Atlanta, which I think they've kind of been craving in recent years. I like Dallas Turner to them. Chicago at pick 9. Listen, as a Jets fan who the Jets have solidified their offensive line throughout the offseason, so I don't think they're going tackle. Even though I had them take a tackle in almost every mock I've done. I would really love Roma Odunze to slip to 10. Really love it. But I just don't see that happening. If you're sitting here, if you're the Bears and you have the opportunity to completely reset and get a new quarterback, franchise quarterback at pick 1 and a franchise wide receiver in Roma Odunze to pair alongside DJ Moore at pick 9, I think you have to do that. Which I didn't talk about it in previous mock drafts, by the way. I've had the Bears getting as high as pick 13 for Justin Fields. Granted, I didn't think he was worth that. It was on a New York radio show that I heard Mel Kiper Jr. say that it could take a top half of the first round pick to get Justin Fields. And now, obviously, that's ridiculous. And he's since turned on that stance. But anyway, the Jets, I just mentioned they restructured their offensive line. They bring in Terrion Arnold. I just saw his name. They bring in Tyron Smith to play left tackle, Morgan Moses to play right tackle. I have a feeling they're going to end up signing David Bakhtiari to play, that swing tackle role. Good friends with Aaron Rodgers, obviously, from their days in Green Bay. I would be surprised if there's a tackle pick here. Not shocked, but surprised. Even though both of those starting tackles are on 1-year deals, I just can't see it. The inside of their line is solidified as well. They got John Simpson in free agency, and they also still have Joe Tippmann at center and Elijah Vera Tucker at right guard. So I think they go a weapon here. If Rome Odunze is on the board, you feel really good about that wide receiver core. Garrett Wilson, Rome Odunze, maybe you bring in a wide receiver 3 like Odell Beckham or Mike Williams. But obviously that's not the case here. Even though I love Tyler Conklin, I think Jeremy Ruckert's an underrated player. Adding a guy with the talent level of Brock Bowers in a year where you need to win, it's a lot of fun. And I could see the Jets doing it. Vikings at pick 11. This is kind of a fit for JJ McCarthy if he was still on the board, but he's not, obviously. I think they go with the best defensive player available. If I'm picking from these guys, it's really hard for me not to pick Quinyon Mitchell just because I've been a proponent of his rising up the draft boards back when he was ranked 38th on NFL Mock Draft Database Simulator. But I do think they don't draft him here. I think Terrion Arnold is rising as the consensus number 1 corner in this draft and number 2 defensive player in this draft behind Dallas Turner, his former teammate. So Terrion Arnold, I think, will be the pick for the Minnesota Vikings, adding a talented defensive player to that defense that needs so much help, even though they did improve in free agency, certainly. Denver at pick 12. I can see them going corner. You pair a guy with Pat Surtain and really solidify that defensive backfield. But I think pass rusher is a more urgent need. A guy like Jared Verse with the top end talent that he has, I like that pick with Sean Payton's Denver Broncos. The Vegas Raiders. I don't hate any of these top 3 picks for them, and all 3 are suggestions by this website. Olufashanu is probably the most talented of these 3 players. Tyrese Fuaga is a guy who could move inside if you needed him to, which their interior offensive line could use a little help too. Quinyon Mitchell, I think, has the ability to be a shutdown corner in this league. But at the end of the day, I think tackle is a more pressing need. You need to protect whoever your quarterback is going to be. I don't know what it's going to be. But I am going to make a prediction. The spoiler alert on that quarterback later in this episode. You brought in Gardner Minshew. You have Aiden O'Connell. I don't think either of them are the future, but whether they're starting or a rookie starting, you need to protect him. And having a developmental guy like Olufashanu who could be good in the future for years to come, and you don't need him to be good week 1, I like that pick for them. Not to say that he won't be good week 1. I think he definitely has the talent to do so. But in comparison to a guy like Joe Alt, who I think, even though his arms are criticized for being a little too short, I think is more likely to be someone who has a greater increase from talent in his performance from the start of the season toward the end of the season. New Orleans at pick 14. They also need help on the offensive line. Need to protect Derek Carr. He got hit way too much last year. And Tyrese Fuaga, I think, could be that guy. play him at right tackle. You could play him at right guard. You could play him at left tackle, in my opinion. I think he could switch over there and really be a solid offensive lineman for the New Orleans Saints for the near and distant future. The Colts probably like how this draft sorted out, and I like how this draft sorted out from a personal perspective. Quinion Mitchell going to them. I'm not a Colts fan, but I mean, just because I think the fit is awesome. He's another talented young player that I would think would really fit in with their defense. He's someone that's completely risen up the draft boards, as I hinted to, with his performance at the Senior Bowl. He looked like the best player there. So I could easily see him making it up in, earlier into this draft. Maybe he goes instead of Terrion Arnold in that, position where I had him in pick 11 going to the Minnesota Vikings. But here is certainly a great landing spot for him in Indianapolis. Seattle at pick 16. Byron Murphy is a guy who I've had them taking in many mock drafts. You could argue Latu would be the pick here. You could argue they need to tackle more, but I can't pass up the talent of Byron Murphy. And I think it's just a great fit. Add on their defensive lineman to Seattle. I know they brought back Leonard Williams, but you could bring in a guy. It's hard to really know what I always get his name wrong. Not Mike. Is Mike McDonald? Not Mike McDaniel. Mike McDonald. There's too many Micks in the NFL nowadays. Mike McDaniel. No. I just said his name. Mike McDonald. I don't know what his system is really going to be like on the defensive side. Baltimore, I mean, you could copy and paste from Baltimore, but you have to assume that John Harbaugh has some input there. Even though he's more of a special teams guy, I feel like his defenses have been some of the focal points of his Raven teams over the last 10 years, even probably longer than that. Either way, Byron Murphy is a guy who has the talent to be able to fit into the Seattle system. I don't hate if you think Leonard Williams precludes them from that and they go with a guy like J.C. Latham. I completely understand that if that's what you think. Next up for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Oh, voice crack. They signed Gabe Davis, but they did lose out on Calvin Ridley, who I think got overpaid a little bit. And so I don't hate that, but Gabe Davis got more overpaid, in my opinion. I think they're either going wide receiver or corner here. And if you're arguing Brian Thomas Jr. or Nate Wiggins, I would probably go Brian Thomas Jr., but I'm going about who I think is going to be drafted. I think Nate Wiggins would be the pick here for them. Get the most talented corner on the board. The Bengals at pick 18. I've experimented with other picks here, but at the end of the day, Joe Burrow needs to be protected. I don't think they end up trading T. Higgins, which means I don't think a wide receiver's in the cards here. You get a guy like J.C. Latham or Amarius Mims to help protect Joe Burrow and keep him upright, and I think the Cincinnati Bengals could be in good shape this year. So J.C. Latham is the pick that I would select if I'm the Bengals, and that's what I think they go for. The LA Rams at pick 19. Latu from UCLA really feels like a good fit. Cooper DeJean could be the selection here. They need help all over that defense, and the offensive line wasn't great either last year. But I'm going to go Latu. Maybe it's the proximity of the college to the team a little bit. But I just like the fit, and especially with Aaron Donald retiring, I think they need more impact defensive players, and that's exactly what he could be in their defense. Pittsburgh at pick 20. I bounced back and forth on whether they go offensive tackle here to, really help solidify that offensive line and protect Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields. But I think they need help on the defense. And getting a guy like Cooper DeJean with his talent playing across Joey Porter Jr., I think that's a fun defensive backfield for years to come. And I think it has the real potential to be one of the better ones as they develop together. Miami at pick 21. They need help on the offensive line, and I say that all the time. Their defense certainly lost down on pieces. And a guy like Johnny Newton down here, Jerson Newton, whatever you want to call him, from Illinois could be a pick, especially with, what's his name, their defensive lineman that went to the Raiders. I'm blanking. But anyway, I think they need to help protect Tua. And Tua is a guy who's had injury history in the past, not in this past season, but in previous years. Amarius Mims is a guy who I think you can't pass up at pick 21. At pick 22, the Philadelphia Eagles. Do I think they could take a wide receiver here? Yes. Do I think they could take a tackle here? Yes. Do I think they could take a corner in Kool-Aid McKinstry, who certainly slid down draft boards? Yes. And so that makes this pick a little more interesting and a little more difficult. The question is where they go. And I don't know. I didn't think a lot about this pick here. If they get a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., it certainly adds to their wide receiver core, and I could see it happening. They need help on the offensive line. They brought back I'm forgetting his name from who spent a year in Detroit, former Philly defensive back, Gardner Johnson, who I think will certainly help. So I'm going to take the tackle here. Troy Fontenot, who I think is the most solid player here, feels like the most Philly player here. I feel good about that, but I don't feel great about their options. Could see them trading back a little bit if a team is eager to move up. Minnesota at pick 23. You already got Terrion Arnold. I think adding another impact defensive player would be great for them. You add Terrion Arnold in the backfield and you add Chop Robinson up front. I love that for them. I love that draft for them. Dallas at pick 24. Cutting Michael Gallup certainly makes it seem like they need wide receiver help, and they're targeting that in the draft. Excuse me. Now, whether that's Brian Johnson Jr. or you believe it's a guy like Adonai Mitchell or Xavier Worthy or Keon Coleman, who I think might still end up going in the first round here, as we'll see. I don't know, but I like Brian Thomas Jr. as a big body wide receiver. I think he pairs really well with CeeDee Lamb, helps give Dak Prescott another weapon, especially when they didn't sign a big running back in free agency. Let Tony Pollard, who was underwhelming, go. Zeke Elliott's obviously gone. I think they need another weapon on offense. So Brian Thomas Jr. could definitely be that guy. Green Bay at pick 25. They need help in their defensive backfield, man. I know they signed Xavier McKinney to play safety. I could see them adding another corner here. Kool-Aid McKinstry is the guy. Fun name. Reminiscent of Ha Clinton Dix play for Green Bay in years past in that way. But more seriously, could definitely be a guy who they target to, really take advantage of a top end talent of a defensive player. And if he is added to that defense, I think that really helps them out. I think their offense is really solid and could really develop. But a tackle could be helpful for them, certainly. But I think Kool-Aid McKinstry is the pick for them here. Tampa Bay. Listen, it's one of their needs at wide receiver, and if Mike Evans left in free agency, I obviously think that's a way bigger need. But I don't see that happening here. And with where they're at, an interior offensive lineman could certainly be the play. Jackson Powers Johnson, I think, is a very talented player. Graham Barton could make his way up. Darius Robinson adding another pass rusher to this defense could certainly improve that. I was going JPJ all the way, but Darius Robinson is enticing. I'm going to go Darius Robinson. This might be a little bit of a reach. He's ranked 31 on this website. I think a lot of other mock draft and NFL experts, mock draft platforms and NFL experts have him a little bit lower, but I don't hate the pick. Maybe I regret that later on. We'll see. Arizona Cardinals could take a defensive lineman like Johnny Newton here, and I wouldn't hate it, but I think you need more pieces. And when you could have the potential to make a trade, I think you take that. You have Arizona, trading the pick away, and Arizona's picks don't even populate here. And maybe you have a team like the Las Vegas Raiders, who are going into this season with Aiden O'Connell, and it's not letting me trade their pick. This is fun. We're going to season with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, and it won't let me trade their pick. But you're going to know. This website's a little broken. You're going to know that I'm taking, for the Vegas Raiders, I'm taking the quarterback of the future, and I'm taking Michael Penix Jr., a guy who I think is, like I said earlier, might be the fourth best quarterback ranked in this draft, in my opinion. A guy who is incredibly accurate, incredibly tough, would fit in with that Antonio Pierce Raiders culture. He'd be a guy who I'd love throwing deep balls to the outside to Devontae Adams in that offense. You'd have to love that. Buffalo Bills, they lost Gabe Davis. I could see them going wide receiver here. I could also see them going defensive player. Jerzon Johnny Newton could be the pick here. But adding Adonai Mitchell with his vertical alongside Stephon Diggs, that's a fun duo. And in case Stephon Diggs does get disgruntled, since there's always rumors around him, you have a guy that could be, an impact player for you for years to come. I like that pick for them. A.D. Mitchell to the Buffalo Bills. Detroit at pick 29. I think Jerzon Newton falling to them is a really good fit. Adding an impact defensive player up front to go alongside with their first overall pick from last year, who I can never remember the name of. Not last year, the year before. Aiden Hutchinson. Really, I think this would be a solid draft pick for them. I think he is a Dan Campbell guy. they need help on the defensive line. I like that a lot. And Baltimore pick 30. Letting Odell Beckham go, I think they could add a wide receiver here, whether that's Xavier Worthy or Keon Coleman. You can make the argument certainly for the fun of it. I do think Keon Coleman's going to be drafted before Xavier Worthy, and if those are the two options, I don't think they go offensive line here. Um, I don't know where else you feel could be an impact here. I mean, they could go corner, but I feel like it'd be a little bit of a reach. Maybe Kamari Lassiter could be the pick for them. But I'm going Keon Coleman here, who I think is the next best wide receiver on the board. Add another weapon to that offense with Justin Fields, with Lamar Jackson. Obviously, you had Zay Flowers, who looked good last year. Rashad Bateman is still there, I believe. I think that offense is fun. Did I just get it mixed up? Is that Zay Flowers? Why can I always get these two receivers drafted last year mixed up. I think Zay Flowers is in Minnesota. No, I was right the first time. Who is Minnesota's wide receiver that I always get mixed up with him? Vikings depth chart. I'd like to say that I'm not a college football expert, or frankly, an NFL football expert. So please don't judge me for my knowledge here, because I am a little bit of a casual. Jordan Addison is who I was thinking of. A little bit of a casual, and you come to my channel for not too highly educated takes. You can probably figure out that from the first 30 picks. San Francisco at pick 31. They need help on the offensive line. I don't hate taking JPJ, Tyler Guyton, or Graham Barton. I think JPJ is probably the pick here, probably the best talent available. And then Kansas City, I don't hate going Tyler Guyton, but putting Xavier Worthy's speed in this offense back giving Patrick Mahomes another speedy weapon that he hasn't had. And it's certain that they need weapons. I mean, they brought in who am I always forget names. Anyway, they made a wide receiver signing this offseason. I'm gonna really keep looking things up as I go through this mock drafts. Chiefs wide receiver signing, and Andy Reid, Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, who I think could be a very good receiver for them. Rashee Rice certainly has developed, but Travis Kelce looked like he took a little step back in the regular season. Kind of stepped it up at the playoffs, but adding a weapon like Xavier Worthy with his top end speed with a 4.22 40-yard dash, I love that for Kansas City's offense. So we went through. We had the Chicago Bears officially taking Caleb Williams. Jaden Daniels going to Washington at pick 2, which I think is the first time I've actually had that in a mock draft. Drake May to the Patriots at 3. The Giants getting J.J. McCarthy at 6. Cardinals and Chargers and Bears getting impact wide receivers in the top 9. Impact defensive players going to the Vikings, the Broncos, the Colts, the Seahawks. Oh my gosh, I'm struggling to speak. The Jaguars, the Rams, Steelers, all the way through. Strong offensive lineman additions for the Raiders, for the Saints, all the way back up to the Titans, for the Bengals who desperately need it, for the Dolphins who desperately need it, for the Eagles who probably need it. You had Brian Thomas Jr. across this from CeeDee Lamb. Listen, this draft is fun. Kool-Aid McKinstry in Green Bay. The Raiders trading up, not the Panthers. I mean, not the Cardinals. Ignore this. Michael Penix Jr. So the Raiders walk out of this draft with Olu Fashanu and Michael Penix Jr. Two guys who, if you would have asked me a couple months ago, I would have thought would have been top 15 picks. And they get one of them at pick 13 and one of them at pick 27 in this mock. Adonai Mitchell giving Buffalo another weapon. Man, Xavier Worthy and his speed in Kansas City, and adding Keon Coleman to Lamar Jackson's offense. This is a lot of fun. I like this mock draft. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like I said, this is the mock draft that I think is going to happen. So if you disagree, let me know what you think in the comments. I really appreciate your support on this mock draft. If you enjoy them, click subscribe. I'm going to have mock drafts leading up until the draft, not too far away, right about a month away. So subscribe for those. I appreciate your support. Thanks for watching this Quick Thoughts episode. I hope you enjoy. Peace out.